Hello, everybody, and I am here with a slightly new setup, and the goal is to try to eliminate that weird. I don't even know how to explain it. That bizarre, little tinny echo thing that I get at the beginning of all my recordings, and I do not know what causes it. Although, admittedly, I am a little bit worried by looking at the audio line right now and seeing that the audio line is a little bit low. But hey, you know what? We'll see what I hear in editing, and if it's terrible, you probably won't hear this anyways. So there you go. So unfortunately, the setup has me kind of having to look around it to get to my screen, which is a little bit of a problem. But we're here to break down UFC 301, or not break it down. We're reviewing it, we're unpacking it, we're uncompressing the files. And this fight card was about the best version the UFC could hope for. And I say that because almost every fight had a fairly positive version of itself when there were negative versions on the table. So at the top of the card, you had Alexander Pantoja, Alexandre Pantoja. Pardon me. I need to not say Alexander. Alexandre Pantoja versus Steve Erceg, and this fight was competitive. It looked like a title. It looked largely like a title fight, which is good, or at least a battle of top contenders. Erceg wasn't steamrolled, wasn't found to be physically incapable of resisting Pantoja. It was competitive. It could have gone either way, but I think an Erceg scorecard would have been a little bit of a tragedy. And Pantoja retains his title. Well, again, I'll go into these fights more in detail, one at a time. But then you had Jose Aldo, who fought Jonathan Martinez and looked, I'm going to say this, not like the old Aldo. I think a lot of people are kind of saying that, like this, he looks like he's never been away or whatever. I don't think he was that crisp. I don't think he was that. But the things that age usually ravages, reaction time, speed, etc., fast twitch, muscle fiber, still absolutely there with Aldo. He looks absolutely competitive, like a guy who can still beat ranked fighters in the UFC, including Jonathan Martinez. But I would pump the brakes a little bit because Martinez is kind of tailor-made for him, but this was a positive version of this fight. Anthony Smith got the freest guillotine I think he's ever had in his career against Vitor Petrino. Not much more to say about that. Honestly, I'm probably just going to skip that fight because that was the fight. Michelle Pereira memed on Ior Porteria. Probably should have been DQ'd if we're being honest, but hey, whatever. Kyle Bahayo versus Paul Craig was actually fairly exciting. It was Kyle Bahayo fighting smart because he didn't go to the ground with Paul Craig willingly, but at the same time being aggressive and smart and aggressive and smart. Kyle Bahayo, that's actually pretty entertaining. Joe Anderson Brito versus Jack Shore was a bit of a downturn. There was a lot of clinching in this fight, which I didn't really enjoy, but hey, it was still a fun time. Yasmin Lucindo versus Karolina Kowalkiewicz was fine. Mukbek Oralbai and Els Brenner, I'm probably still messing up Oralbai's first name. I fully admit that. Was a fun fight. And was it fight of the night? No fight of the night. Okay, just performances of the night going to Michelle Pereira, Kyle Bahayo, Mauricio Ruffi, and Alessandro Costa. Which, I mean, is fine. I don't think there was really a fight of the night, but this one was probably it. Drakkar Klose versus Joaquin Silva was fine. Mauricio Ruffi versus Jamie Malarkey is getting a lot of shine right now. I'll get into it a little bit why I think that's a bit of an overplay, but still, it's a good fight. And then we had Dione Barbosa versus Ernesta Cara Keita. Am I right? Did I get it right? Barbosa won that fight, and it was pretty okay. I do have some thoughts on that one. And then Bonfim versus Pichel was a little bit sad, but hey, it's just what it is. It was still fine. Costa versus Borjas was also good. So pretty much everything was entertaining in its own way. We lost the Gene Silva versus William Gomes fight. When Gomes, for some reason, cut down to 143 and looked absolutely dead. I will say that probably he should just go up to 155. He'd be big enough. So I don't really fully understand why he kills himself. By the way, just swapping to my notes document. All right, let's go back to the main event here. Steve Erceg versus Alexander Pantoja. So, how did this fight go? Essentially, I think a few things let Erceg down. Number one was a little bit of fight IQ. There were a couple times, particularly in the fifth round, where he would take Pantoja down and let Pantoja scramble with him and eliminate where he was winning, which was on the feet. Not that it was a one-sided thing. Like Pantoja was landing some good shots, some decent low kicks. There was some moments where like Erceg had to get the leg a little shakeout or whatever. Definitely, hit a nerve. Probably literally. Quite possibly literally. And obviously that was having some impact, and Pantoja was, when he was really, really willing to crash in, was having some success and so on. So it was a perfectly fine performance on the feet from Pantoja, but Erceg was getting the better of it. He was showing off the boxing. I had him winning rounds 2 and 4. I think round 4 has to go to him. Round 2 is a little bit more of a toss up. According to the UFC stats, for what they are worth, Erceg outlanded Pantoja 28-23 in significant strikes and 33-27 overall. He was taken down 3 times, but that amounted to only 1.25, 1 minute and 25 seconds, pardon me, of top control. But he definitely lost the first round, which was 2 minutes on the ground and him getting outstruck. He definitely lost the third round, in my opinion, which was him getting outstruck and control for about 2 minutes, 3 for 3 on takedowns. And then the fifth round, of course, like I said, I think he kind of gave it away when he went for that late takedown, ended up on his back for better than half of the round, got outstruck, and that was kind of my takeaway from that. Erceg looked like a contender, though. I appreciate that. And frankly, it was kind of the perfect result because I didn't want Erceg to win. I like Erceg, but like I think the idea of number 10 fighter of the division coming up and actually winning that belt, a belt that is like flyweight is unique of the men's UFC divisions because it's a division they've tried to kill multiple times and they've never really put any effort into building it into a marquee division. So having someone who's number 10 coming in win the belt was probably actually going to be a relatively bad thing. Even though I like Erceg and I like Pantoja, but I'm like not particularly a fan of Pantoja because Pantoja is not like really my favorite type of fighter. He's kind of athletic cheat code Brazilian. He wrestles really well because he's physical, not because he has good technique, sort of thing. So at the end of the day, it was kind of a problem in that regard for me. But Pantoja picking up the win here is how this should go. He should probably fight Amir Albazi, but like I have no idea what the deal with Albazi's back is. Back injuries are tricky and hard to predict and weird. So in a perfect world, that's the fight. But in a perfect world, that was the fight here instead of Erceg. So there you go. For Erceg, I've got Metal Cap or Brendan Royval. Both I think are very, very fun ideas. People who I would say probably do still have physical advantages over him, but he is a better technician then, and I'm really intrigued to see what happens there. I mean, there are others. You could put him up against Alex Perez. That would be fine. Like, you could put him up against anyone ranked in the top 10, and it would fit because he just went out there and he took 2 rounds or 1 round on one judge's scorecard. Actually, kind of interested. What was the discrepancy on the cards? Pantoja versus Erceg. Judge Fabio Alvarez gave 135 to Pantoja. That's my card. Sal D'Amato match. That's my card. Dave Torelli gave the second round to Pantoja. And otherwise have my card. That is fine. The second round is like fairly close. Again, going to the UFC stat counter, a difference of 5 significant strikes, 6 total strikes. And Pantoja did hold top control for more, which should not get scored, but we know the judges still do. We know that it should go like damage, effective grappling, and like control should come in later on as like a tiebreaker if everything else is equal, and this was not equal. But there you go. It is an acceptable scorecard. A lot of people did have, including both corners, actually, were talking about Pantoja being up 3-0 after the third round. So I guess I can't really squawk. So co-main event: Jonathan Martinez versus Jose Aldo. This was just Jose Aldo doing his thing. He was faster. He was more comfortable in the pocket. Martinez wasn't really able to control the range with his kicks. It was, he would have moments on the outside where he would be landing a couple of good low kicks and so on. He's known for those low kicks. Him and Chris Gutierrez trained together and are probably some of the most dangerous low kickers at bantamweight. and they're out there. He had his moments, but for the most part, it was Aldo being able to get into the pocket, and Martinez at no point being able to really pressure him or push a pace. I guess you could argue in the second round there was a prolonged wall install period, which I guess you could count as Martinez pressuring Aldo. I suppose, but that was about it. And Aldo was otherwise allowed to just kind of do his thing. I said it when I picked Martinez to win this fight. It was entirely based on the idea that 37-year-old Aldo has been wanting to box and is just doing this to kind of get out of his contract. But he took it seriously by all accounts. He went out there and he performed again, not like classic Aldo, not like champion Aldo. I think champion Aldo would have finished Martinez, but he showed off the ability to stop the wrestling, showed off the ability to stop the kicks, and he showed off that his boxing is still very, very, very functional. And of course, why probably he thinks he would like to box. Aldo versus Yadong Song is my pick. Martinez versus Mario Bautista would be a fun fight, in my opinion, and one that I would pick Mario to win. And I'm a big fan of Mario Bautista. And I'm not a big fan of Jonathan Martinez. So there you go. Anthony Smith versus Vitor Petrino. Yeah, I have nothing else to say other than what I did in the summary there. Petrino shot into a takedown, got caught in a guillotine, knew he was caught in a guillotine, still elevated and gave Smith better angles for the guillotine and got tapped out. I suppose I should briefly go over that, obviously the fight didn't start with a guillotine attempt. It was a 1 second. It was a fight that went 2 minutes, so obviously there were other things. But essentially it was Petrino getting kind of his calf kicks or his calf smashed by Smith's low kicks and not liking it. And then going for it. I guess this is the problem is that there is no reason that Vitor Petrino shouldn't beat Anthony Smith, but at the same time, he really hasn't fought anybody who is good. Oh, he beat Marcin Prachnio. Yeah, but Marcin Prachnio is his own special, not greatness. And then on the regional scene, he does have a win over Gadza Mirdad Antagulov, who, if I recall correctly, is a former UFC fighter. Yeah. He's the guy who lost to Paul Craig and Maxine Grishin and Michael Oleksiejczuk and Ion Kudalaba. He basically has one round of cardio and that's it. And he's super strong. I'll give him that. He's strong. I think he's the guy I think who has a knockout from bottom somehow. If I recall correctly, somewhere on the regional scene. But just kind of a dumb brute who doesn't have cardio, doesn't pace himself. Anyways, next up for these guys, I don't really care. I've got Smith against Azat Mirzakhanov, and I got Petrino against Ion Kudalaba because we might as well see the two superly physically impactful guys, but who are also just kind of dumb, fight each other. Like I said, Michel Pereira just kind of memed on Ior Porteria. He knocked him down, did a double knee flip that probably should have got him disqualified because realistically, whether the knee hit the head or whether the knee hit the chest, then his shin hit the head, which is illegal to kick a guy down as well in the head. So, yeah, either way, this probably should have been a DQ. And then Porteria gets caught in a guillotine choke and gets choked out. I'm happy it's not a DQ, I guess, because it was incredibly fun and incredibly meme-worthy. It was a Pereira fight. It was the most Pereira fight ever. And I've got him against Roman Dolidze because it's just the most meme idea I've got. I still don't really have a lot of faith in Pereira to be a contender because so much of what he is dumb. He's incredibly physical capable, and he's incredibly capable in general. He's a good striker, he's a good grappler, he's a good wrestler, he's a good athlete. Everything is there. It's just he even the backflip into guard here, completely unnecessary, and probably should have gotten him DQ'd. So that's the thing. He could literally be a champion, I think, but he would probably prefer to be dumb. For Porteria, I've got Dusko Todorovic. I had a little spat with someone on Twitter about this fight who was talking about this fight being financial freedom, betting on Porteria at plus 425 or whatever. It's no, Why are you betting on a guy who is a lesser athlete, lesser technician, not durable, not super powerful to beat to win fights? Also, like frankly, I say this in every prediction video I have where I talk about how you shouldn't bet what you can't lose. If you're looking to get financial freedom from MMA betting, just stop. Just don't. There you go. Paul Craig versus Kyle Bahia, like I said, was a pretty fun fight. It was basically when Bahia was standing up, he was just like absolutely working Paul Craig, who was not boxing at all. He was just throwing kicks, and when he would go for a takedown, he would end up pulling guard. Someone on Twitter put up a picture of these two facing off with each other, the intensity and the face paint and everything, and then it's like, this is the most intense this confrontation is going to get. We're going to get Paul Craig shooting blast doubles into pulling guard, and he did. He did. Eventually, Paul Bahia was able to knock him out. By the way, I just think that Paul Craig just needs to get rid of all of his coaching staff because they were between rounds 1 and 2 telling him it was a good round. Don't get me wrong here. Some fighters are just unteachable or whatever in certain regards. They just can't. They just can't grasp it. But if Paul Craig hasn't tried a different boxing coach, he needs to. If he hasn't tried a different wrestling coach, he needs to. Because I don't know, it's weird because he seems so aware that like he was talking about retirement and then he ended up going down to 185 and thinking that would fix problems, and it just doesn't. Like, he's a big dude with a functional guard grappling game. He still can't take people down. He still can't strike. Like, I don't know. Bahio called out Jared Cannonier, which probably won't happen because Cannonier is booked against Nasruddin Imavov, I believe. And if Imavov wins that fight, I imagine Bahio stops being interested in the Cannonier fight. And if Cannonier wins that fight, dude's basically in number 1 contender territory, and Bahio's not. So I don't think that'll happen. I've got Bahio against Marvin Vettori. I've got Paul Craig against Rodolfo Vieira because why not? Joe Anderson Brito versus Jack Shore, like I said, was a little bit disappointing just because I had high hopes for this fight. This was like my fight of the night pick sort of thing. But realistically, it was a little bit too clinch heavy. Brito was basically just kind of crashing in, landing some good power shots, but then ending up with a clinch along the cage. Obviously, a big story here was the low kicks of Brito, hammering the calf so much that he opened up a very deep gash in the leg of Jack Shore, which in the second round caused the doctor to be called in and stop the fight. They are saying that they think that the leg was broken. I haven't seen confirmation one way or the other. It was a weird stoppage. I'll leave it at that because we do not see a lot of people get stopped on a cut on the shin. But I am perfectly fine with bowing to the doctor. I am not a doctor. I don't know. Was it broken? It was just a little bit weird. Brito's been calling out Dan Ige repetitively. Why not? It makes enough sense. For Jack Shore, I've got Yusuf Zalal. Karolina Kowalkiewicz versus Jasmine Lucindo was basically just kind of Lucindo's styling. And when I say styling, I mean just outlanding. If I pull up the UFC stats for this particular fight, 83-42 in total significant strikes. I believe all 3 rounds will be heavily in her favor. 25-7, 38-26, and 20-9, all in favor of Lucindo. I will say this, Lucindo has really bad range finding game. Like, it takes her sort of like three tries to actually find the range. There were moments where she would like jump for a knee that was nowhere near. She would throw a kick that was very, very short. I do actually legitimately wonder, like, is there an eyesight problem there? It's possible. But anyways, aside from that, she was fine. I do think that she's still kind of raw, but like she is super young. She's 22 years old, so plenty of time to improve. I do think that John Anik is jumping the gun because after the fight, he was like, Lucindo's a future contender. And like I said, young enough, totally. Would it surprise me? No. But there's a lot of rawness that like there is no guarantee that she'll actually fix. Whereas this was just a fight where she fought a woman who, in women's MMA history, was older than her opponent by more than anyone else, at least in the UFC. There are some things in Japan, let me assure you, that top this. It was just kind of an expected performance. She outworked her. Kowalkiewicz's game is functional still, but like there's not a lot of power. There's not a lot of strength. There were like She almost lost to, and some people thought she did lose to Silvana Gomez Juarez, who is just a powder keg with no real talent whatsoever as a technician. So the idea that like this is a surprising performance is, or a making performance is, I think, a little bit much. But anyways, Lucindo versus Loma Luke Boomy would be my pick. Kovacevic versus Molly Meatball McCann would be my pick for next opponents. Then we had Els Brenner versus Mutkebek Oralby. Oralby was able to get takedowns, crack Brenner quite frequently. Fight IQ let him down, though, in two ways. Number one is the fact that he literally grabbed the cage in the third round and got a point deducted, which was, I thought, good work by the referee, but there is like a certain consistency we got to talk about there, because in the main event, I think it was Erceg. Pretty sure it was Erceg, but Erceg grabbed the cage as well and just didn't even really get a warning. So consistency would be a thing maybe to talk about with the refereeing there, but Oralby was having such success with coming forward and stinging Brenner with his overhands, and it was constantly finding a home. And then he would continue to wrestle, even when Brenner's started to, in the second and the third round, out wrestle him and be able to get like on his back and have like Brenner style backpack. And realistically, we were headed to a draw until the final like 10 seconds, maybe, where Oralby slams home a good 1-2 and then drops Brenner basically at the bell, sealing the third round as a 9-9 because he got the point deduction and winning the fight 29-27, I believe, across the board. Am I wrong? MMA decisions, please. What do we got? Oralby versus Brenner. Yep, 29-27 across the board. Did his thing. I'm actually kind of curious. What were the stats here? Stats don't tell us everything, but they do tell us something. Yeah, Oralby outlanded him in the first and the second. Second round by very, very little, by the way, 35-33. And in the third round, it was the knockdown, because at that point he had been outlanded 32-21. I'm gonna guess it's 32-22, but like the knockdown, I'm removing the knockdown strike. And Brenner was able to start getting takedowns. So the negative here for Oralby is that he was unable to adapt his game plan to what was winning, or to what Brenner's specifically what Brenner's had started to do and work. And obviously the foul and the point deduction are a big deal. But on the bright side, his stand-up did look better. He's got good power. He hurt Brenner a couple of times. And he's got a heck of a chin, which I did already know. But this is confirmation that this guy does have a cinder block for a head and has a pretty big future, I think. Anyways, Oralby versus Mark Diakese and Brenner versus Mauricio Ruffi, who we'll talk about later. I am being lazy and matchmaking two fighters from the same card, but hey, sometimes it fits. Joaquin Silva versus Drakkar Klose. Was Drakkar Klose just outworking him in the first round? Silva having the second round off of better impact and power, because he is Joaquin Silva. He hits exceptionally hard. And then I gave the third round to Silva basically for the same things. He was hitting Klose much, much, much harder than what Klose was doing to him. Klose also shot into a guillotine and almost got Canadian destroyered for my pro wrestling fans. Barely survived that, so that was hard. He also got dropped by Silva, who was looking for the finish, another guillotine. I am interested. What were the scorecards here? Because I have a hard time thinking that they gave. I have a really hard time thinking of how Silva lost the second or the third. What do we got here? Okay, so Ben Cartledge, Rafael Fajea, and David Letherby all gave the first two rounds to Klose. Let's have a look at the numbers from round two, because that was, of course, the questionable one per my recollection. Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I understand he had like the 3 minutes and 58 seconds of control time, but he did very, very little with it. The strikes landed actually were in favor of Joaquin Silva, and significant strikes were very, very close, 17-15. I don't know. I still think Joaquin Silva won this fight. And I say this as a guy who picked Drakkar Klose and would again. But I think they rewarded the wall install a little bit too much. Anyways, I'm still treating them. I'm still treating Close as a winner and giving him Matt Favola. And for Silva, I don't really care because the problem with Joaquin Silva is he's 35 years old. He's really just kind of a physicality test. He's not a smart fighter. He's a very, very explosive, very dynamic fighter, very, very dangerous against anybody. Someone took issue with me saying this, but I think we came to an agreement that I was right on Twitter about the idea that this is a fight that is very, very dangerous. And he's like, well, all fights are dangerous. I'm like, yes, but there is a scale of danger. Like there is a standard MMA fight danger scale, and then there's Joaquin Silva. I will knock you out after losing the entire fight with a jumping knee or a spinning heel kick, and you just have to deal with that. So it's kind of weird. Like I look forward to his fights. It just doesn't really matter who it's against. That's my matchmaking logic. Like if I were the UFC matchmaker in charge of the lightweight division, I would just have Silva in my like little box of like dudes who are fun against everybody, and when I need one of them, just plug them in. um, Against each other would also be dope. Mauricio Rufi showed off some things and knocked out Jamie Malarkey. Malarkey was having basically no success trying to play it at range. He briefly went with the F it and brawl strategy, which worked for a little bit, but then he got hurt with the right hand. Dean Thomas was out there calling him young Conor McGregor. Please don't call people young Conor McGregor because Conor McGregor's whole thing was more of an out of cage thing. It wasn't him as a fighter, which to be clear, I'm not trying to downgrade Conor McGregor as a fighter. He was fantastic, but it was the aura because realistically speaking, he got listed as like the best fighter of all time despite having like no notable wins until Chad Mendes. like people are big upping his win over Dennis Siever. Anyways, Rufi looked good. He would look creative. He went for like a scissor heel hook takedown, which is ridiculous. Um, he finished off Malarkey with a knee, uppercut, and that was it. It was not a flawless victory like DC was saying because, I mean, he's like, it's like in Mortal Kombat when they say flawless victory. I'm like, flawless victory is when you don't get hit. And Malarkey did have 14 strikes landed. So it's not. It's just not. It was a very, very good debut. Do not get me wrong, but let's tone it down with some of the praise. Like I said, I've got him against Ellsbrenner, and I've got Malarkey against Jordan Leavitt. I am worried about Malarkey, though. Dude is getting knocked out a lot, and a lot of his game kind of relied on tall man defense and a chin. So we might be at the end of the road. I still have concerns about Rufi's sort of Michel Pereira-ness with like some of the weird stuff he does, and the fact that he doesn't fight at a particularly high pace for lightweight. But we'll see. He's definitely an incredible physical athlete and so on. Dione Barboza versus Ernesta Querequeda was a somewhat controversial fight, basically because of the second round. The first round was largely grappling, Barboza doing a good job with some solid low kicks, getting the takedown despite a cage grab by Querequeda, which, by the way, cage grabs, Querequeda defended well, but like clearly lost the round. Ended up getting caught in a deep rear naked choke, almost getting caught in an armbar towards the end of the round, but survived, showed some decent scrambling ability. And then the third round was basically Querequeda stuffing the takedowns, 0 for 6, I think, and her landing basically a lot of shots against Barboza. We'll get into the second round, but I do want my UFC stats handy real quick. So the controversy of round 2 is that Querequeda won the volume. And towards the end of the round had turned it around because Barboza started getting tired. My argument for scoring it for Barboza is the fact that she landed the best strikes of the round. There were 2 spinning back elbows that she landed. Her strikes were all powerful, whereas Querequeda is just volume. And I think this is a long-term problem for Querequeda, is that she doesn't seem to have any power. Like very, very, very little power, if at all. So I think it's Querequeda. I think it's an S. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I will probably, we will be 2 years in the future and I will still be getting this last name wrong. But anyways, my point was that I thought the damage in the second round went to Barboza. She landed the effective strikes. Yes, she got outlanded quite significantly, but Karasketa is just not doing things that lead to actual damage. She showed off a good ability to scramble out of bad positions against Barboza. This is overall, I think, a positive fight for her because it proves that even if you can get her down, she went down against a judo national champion, I do believe, and was not instantly submitted, was not controlled particularly easily outside of the first round as well. She has incredible cardio, incredible pace. She will win a lot of fights. I just think that she lost this fight. I think that she needs to not get hurt to win rounds because nothing she does leads to significant damage. She needs things to look like the third round where she outlanded Barbosa pretty heavily and stopped 6 takedowns. Anyways, so I scored it for Barboza. I understand a lot of people scored it for Karasketa. For next opponents, I have Julia Stoyarenko for Barboza because why not? Grappling fun. And Karasketa, I've got against Jamie Lynn Horth. Ishmael Bonfim versus Vince Pichel was just kind of an old man fight, basically. It was Bonfim outworking Pichel each and every single round, being way, way, way too fast for him, and discouraging him from the one weapon that was working pretty consistently, which was the low kick, by countering the low kick and basically shutting it down in the second round. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about the move to Colorado for Vince Pichel because, realistically speaking, I don't think he has the physical tools. To be honest, I don't know if he ever had the physical tools to really make their style work. They're like a very, very kickboxing heavy style. And as much as Vince Pichel is not like a wrestle first kind of guy, a lot of his best performances, the Roosevelt Roberts fight, the Jim Miller fight, the Anthony Njokuani fight, these are all fights where like he employed a wrestling game to help himself out. Like the Garrett Whiteley fight would almost be an example of this, but Garrett Whiteley is just not very good. He just does not have the speed or the reaction ability to work this like kind of Factory X. I think it's Factory X. Is it Factory X? Where is Vince Pichel training? I know it's in Colorado, and I'm pretty sure Mark Montoya was in the corner. It's Factory X, right? I don't know. They got him listed in Big John McCarthy's training academy, which would not be the case. But yeah, I think he's a guy that has to do a little bit of everything, and like this idea of going to Colorado is not really going to help him. The end of the road might be here for him, is all I'm saying. And for Bonfim, I have the winner of Ludovic Klein versus Thiago Moises. Then we had Alessandro Costa versus Kevin Borja. Borjas? I don't know how. I'm not good at Spanish pronunciations. Someone help me. I think it's Borges. I could be wrong. We'll call him Kevin. Anyways, he lost to Costa, who was just able to largely win the exchanges. Pretty good. Particularly, he was very much good at the early low kicking stuff and started to. I mean, there was some counter comfort in the first round where Borges started to sit down on some stuff, but the results weren't really there. He got staggered by a jab, and Costa was generally just able to outpower him and do his thing, and then finish him off in the second round. So, very good performance from Alessandro Costa. He ruined my bid for an undefeated night because after this, I went on a big-ass winning streak because I had Bonfim, I had Barbosa, I had Rufi, I had Closa, I had Oralbai, I had Lucindo, I had Brito, I had Bohayo, I had Pahea. So it was a 9-fight winning streak, and then Anthony Smith ruined it. Or, well, more Vitor Petrino ruined it. But it got off to a bad start right here with Borges getting blown out. A lot of people are talking about Borges getting cut after this. I don't think that that's really an option on the table because he's only lost 2 fights in a row. The UFC tends not to cut you after 2 fights off the Contender Series because it's a very, very friendly contract. I think it's 4 fights long. Usually you'll fight that out or renegotiate an extension. So I think he's probably got at least 2 more fights in him, but admittedly he does need a win. Because a 3rd loss in a row would be a problem. That's why I've got him against Contender Series talent, because I think he's kind of perfect for that. And he's a developing guy himself. He's 26 years old. For Costa, I have Azat Maxim as probably the best fight you could have, because I think they have some similar strengths and some similar weaknesses. I have similar concerns for both, I guess. So they are very, very, very similar. All right. So that brings us to the end of this prediction or recap, I should say. Please check out the links down below. I will not be watching the next UFC card live because I'll be out of town. So that'll be interesting. But I will still have my predictions sometime this week, probably Wednesday, Thursday area. Get ready for that. Get ready to have fun. And I will see you guys. Well, you will hear me next time. Also, I really need to do another YouTube channel intro video.